Today, I'm talking to Valerie. Valerie has suffered with an eating disorder for the majority of her life. And it was so bad that at age 16 she found herself as an inpatient in a double lockdown unit being fed through a tube. Her eating disorder continued and to spiral out of control until a few years ago she discovered the carnivore diet. Using the carnivore diet, Valerie has been able to heal. Let's meet Valerie. How did you find the carnivore diet?
It was a very long process. It started as looking for something to help my brain. Back in 2017, 2018, I was very, very ill. I was mentally ill. And I had suffered for 35 years with anorexia, mental illness, auditory hallucinations, screaming voices in my head, a lot of other things also. And I had been through a lot of traditional treatment. And at that point, between 2017, 2018, I always have hope, but it was waning. And I was very ill, and I had tried many, many times to get better, and it wasn't happening following traditional treatment. And so I started to research what could possibly help my brain to work, and found some really awesome doctors on YouTube to help me understand and give me the motivation to try one last time. So, but it's a long process of how I came to carnivore. Do you want me to go back to my history first of where this all started?
Yeah, please.
Okay, all right. Well, around 13 or 14 years old, I was very anxious as a youngster, very worried, very people-pleasing. I was diagnosed with an ulcer at 12. That's how bad my nerves were. I wanted to please everyone, was worried that I wouldn't do my homework for school well enough, perfect enough. So that kind of ties into yearning for love, yearning for acceptance, yearning to feel worthy of love. And around the age of 14, I began to feel out of control with my surroundings, with my life, with my family, with my relationships, things that had happened to me as a child. And at first, it was innocent. At first, it was maybe if I lose a few pounds, even though I wasn't overweight, that I could get better control somehow, twisted in a child's mind, that I could get better control of my life, that I couldn't control everything that was going on around me or how I was treated, but I could control what I put in my mouth. So what began innocently as a diet turned into something very dark and very deadly. I lost some weight, skipping meals, hiding that I was skipping meals. I mean, I was only 14. I was a freshman in high school. And I hid it well for a long time. You know, you run out the door, don't have time for breakfast, got to go to school. And then the next one to go was lunch. I would literally sit in the bathroom stall with the door closed with my feet up so that no one could tell that I was in there for lunch period, so that I could skip lunch and then have supper with my family, and no one knew. And then I started restricting supper. So by the time I got to be 15 and then 16, I had lost enough weight for my mom and my grandparents to get alarmed. They would all talk to me. You need to stop this. You need to eat. You need to do something. You're too thin. You're losing too much weight. At that point, I was probably 100 pounds at 5'9", and it was starting to get alarming to them. And probably a year into this, by the time I hit 16, that was when it wasn't a choice anymore. That was when the voices started, and they screamed at me 24 hours a day, day and night. You're not worthy. You are worth nothing, and you don't deserve to eat. If you eat that, you'll be out of control. You'll be fat. These voices just all surrounding self-worth, all surrounding your worth as a person, just screamed at me day and night, and they would not quit. I went to bed that way. I woke up that way. The only time I escaped was when I was asleep. At 16, I was put inpatient at an eating disorders unit in Ohio. Everyone thought that that was the best thing. That was a big step back in the 80s to do that. And I had a team around me. I had psychiatrists, medical doctors, dietitians, but it did not help. Traditional treatment, it just doesn't help. So the first thing that happens is the NG feeding tube that's put in if you are very underweight and not eating and not going to comply with trying to eat yet. And looking back on it now, it makes me angry. This same feeding tube ingredients that is in it is the same first three ingredients that's in baby formula: canola oil, soy, and high fructose corn syrup. We know as carnivores and those who are health advocates that those ingredients are so inflammatory, and that there's nothing nutrient dense in there that actually will help the brain to work better and even help the body to work better. So those same ingredients that are in infant formula is what's in your over-the-counter Boost and Ensure that people use as a supplement or a replacement for meals. And it's the same thing that's used in a hospital and also a nursing home setting for our elderly, which does not help their brains and their cognitive function either. And of course, anyone that's in the hospital for a surgery or anything to do with the throat and they have to supplement, food by liquid, it's this same concoction. So that's what was hooked up to me first when I was inpatient. It drives the anxiety higher. All of that sugar makes you feel like you're going to crawl out of your skin. And you're inpatient in a double lockdown unit. You can't even go for a walk. You're locked in, and your movement is restricted, of course, because you're underweight. And that is put into your feeding tube 3 meals and 3 snacks. So 6 times a day, that's being pumped into you. And then when you say you're going to try to eat, or you prove that you're going to try to eat food, then the feeding tube is removed. But what's put in place of that and what they consider food, what they consider to prove that you're getting better, to prove that you are going to be well, is a very high carb sugar tray of food. It's basically like any other hospital food. It's a lot of bagels and pasta and cereals and jello and pudding and cakes and cookies. And the thinking back then was, eating disordered people have a fear of food. So if you can eat the cakes, the cookies, the donuts, well, then we'll say that you're better and send you home. And that's all that was on the tray, basically. It was very low protein, definitely no fat, and just an array of carbs and sugars. I was inpatient for 4 weeks and then released to go home. And I wasn't even home 48 hours before I started to relapse, because nothing had changed in my brain. I had proven to them that I could go home by eating what they wanted me to eat, and I put some pounds on. But the mental illness, the broken brain part of mental illness was raging on. There was never a reduction of any of it. So as soon as I got out, I relapsed. And by the time I was 18, still seeing the psychiatrists that the hospital set up. You know, I was within treatment this whole time. I didn't just leave the hospital and then relapse and then have no expert support, if you want to call it. I continued to have therapy, do therapy, see nutritionists, try to follow the food plan that they sent home for me from the hospital. And none of it worked. By the time I was 18, graduated from high school and was attempting to try to go off to college, I had not only gotten back down to the 100 pounds, but was, down a few more pounds. I was between 90 and 95 pounds. I went off to college and struggled. I was living on a few bites of celery, maybe a little bit of spinach, maybe a rice cake. That's it. A lot of Diet Pepsi just to fill my stomach up so that I didn't sit in class and have it growl. But there was nothing going in that had any nutrition. It all had to do with counting calories, memorizing calorie books. Okay, how many calories was in this stalk of celery? How low can I get? Today I only ate 800. Tomorrow I'm only gonna eat 500. And even when I knew the calories that was in what I was eating, that voice that screams is also a driver of obsessive thoughts, of OCD. And so I would sit and calculate and recalculate constantly about what I was eating, if there was more bites than what was there, what I'd eaten all day, did I do well enough? It was bad. So in my second year of college, I finished the second year, and I dropped out after that. I wanted to try to work on my health. And so I left college, went home, attempted to work part-time. That was difficult. At that low of a weight, you can't think straight. You have no energy. You're very, very cold that you can't really even describe. A cold that actually is painful. It hurts your bones. It goes through every layer as if you're out in the middle of winter with no clothes on. And that's how I felt all the time, no matter how many layers I had on, even in summer when it was 90 degrees out. There are pictures of me at 18 to 20 years old with 3 turtleneck shirts, long sleeve turtleneck shirts on in the middle of summer because I just couldn't get warm. That went on for a while. I worked part-time, that kind of stuff. But nothing ever got better. I tried to eat more, but nothing ever happened with the mental illness. It just stayed. It just stayed the way that it was. In 1992, I met who was going to be my wonderful husband. And I understood for the first time in my life what it felt like to be unconditionally loved by a man. I hadn't really had that in my life. And so his acceptance of me, his love for me, helped me to try harder to eat and to gain some weight. And I was, in terms of weight restoration, just that point, nothing else. I was able to do that several times over the course of the 35 years that I suffered. And I'm a big advocate and passionate about helping people understand that that's why traditional treatment doesn't work. Weight restoration does not equal that you are well, that your mental illness is gone. It's just weight. There were 4 times between 14 and 48 where I was what was considered of normal weight. And nothing changed mentally. And when I was of normal weight and not in active starvation, the mental illness raged on in other ways. Because I wasn't actively starving myself, there were other self-harm activities that came out. And I began cutting and I began hair pulling, which is in the medical term is called trichotillomania. And so when I was of normal weight and trying to start a family and get pregnant, which I was told probably wouldn't happen because I hadn't had a menstrual period for 10 years. I had halted everything about adolescence and growth. But we were trying. So those times when I was of normal weight, it didn't fix anything. So the cutting was bad. I spent summers putting on my legs women's foundation, liquid foundation that's meant for the face, and letting it dry on my legs to try to cover up my embarrassment and my shame over cutting my legs. And the same with the hair pulling. I had bald spots everywhere. I was pulling out eyebrows, eyelashes. It was like a release, the same release that anorexics get from starving. I could feel that same release and stress from the cutting and the hair pulling. And those 3 things, the starvation, the cutting, and the hair pulling, they would wax and wane over the years. When I did have my first daughter, after she was born, after she was done nursing, and I wasn't being protective of my body in order to protect her, the starvation started again. And then the cutting and the hair pulling would subside because I was in active starvation again. And every time that I would go back into active starvation, I would quickly just go right back down. I'm 5'9", and the worst was 80 pounds, and that's where I stayed for many, many years. That's a BMI of 11.8. That's not even in the category of they consider severe anorexia. That is a cutoff somewhere at BMI 14 or 15. If you get lower than that, they term it extreme anorexia. It's so low that I shouldn't be alive, but very thankful that I am. So I just went along like this for year after year after year after year. And I had a second daughter. In between the 2 daughters, I had seen psychiatrists. I was put on 7 different psych meds including one that was supposed to quiet the voices. It was an antipsychotic called Seroquel. And that's all it did was make me a tired zombie who had screaming voices. It didn't do anything. I was on 3 different antidepressants, anti-anxiety, other psych meds that were supposed to affect the psychoactive associative disorder with the voices. Nothing ever helped. And it came with a slew of side effects that were just unbearable. And I finally decided to wean off of them. If they're going to make me so tired that I can't even function at all with now 2 daughters and a husband and a home, that I'm going to wean myself off of them, and because they're not helping any. So I went that route also. I went the medication route, and it didn't do anything. So 2017, 2018, we live out in the country in rural Southwest Ohio. We had very, very slow dial-up internet for a long time. And about that time, we were able to get a little faster. We were able to get a smart TV. And that's where I was introduced to YouTube. And I decided to start looking. Over the course of that summer, I had read a couple of books from our library by the lady Julia Ross. And one was called The Diet Cure and one was called The Mood Cure. And in it, I was able to understand that there are very important neurotransmitters in the brain that can only be fed by nutrient-dense animal foods. And I had not consumed any for 35 years. It was just the celery. It was just the spinach. It was whatever I could get away with. And it was always fruit and vegetables. I had cut out protein and fat at 16 years old and never went back. So those 2 books helped me understand the brain chemistry, the endorphins, the GABA receptors, the dopamine, the serotonin, and all of that has to be fueled and refueled by protein and by animal products. Well, at that time, I wasn't ready for that. But I was ready for supplements. I supplemented myself. I would swallow handfuls of pills, thinking that was the same as eating them, as eating the food that contained those. But it was the first step in my long journey. So after reading those 2 books and trying to implement some of the things she talked about in terms of supplementing the neurotransmitters that I could order online. I could order amino acids that are in protein. I could order GABA. I could order, some of these supplements to see if it would help my brain. It was at least actively something that I was doing to try to get better. And at that same time, that was when we got the better TV and internet. And I had, some of this knowledge already. So that's where I started. I started searching on YouTube for depression and brain and, any kind of doctor out there that I could watch or listen to. And I found Dr. Chris Palmer and Dr. Georgia Ede and Nina Teicholz from the Big Fat Surprise. And their talks really hit home. I've always been a researcher by nature, always felt like I needed to have something proved to me before I could try it. And of course, with anorexia and with mental illness, even if you know something to be true, it's a really, really difficult to try. It's really, really difficult to implement that. So that's what I needed to do. And armed with that evidence, I decided to try one more time. I was 48 years old, 80 pounds, homeschooling both of our daughters, which was the best decision that we'd ever made. We'd homeschooled since my older daughter was 4 years old, but it was difficult at times. My brain was so foggy and filled with the incessant calorie counting, the OCD, the voices screaming at me. There were times when it was difficult, and I felt really badly that even basic math skills, I was having trouble with them. So I need to try. So I started with the only thing I could think of that would be mild enough, innocuous enough, fat-free chicken breast. And it was slow going. It was, I had to kind of put myself on a plan or I would feel out of control. So I did it very organized, and I tried to commit to 1 ounce a day. Now, you and I both know that that's nothing. An ounce is 2 tablespoons. It's 2 bites of food. But that shows how badly ill I was. Those first 2 bites of sitting at my kitchen table, promising myself that I needed to do this, to try one last time, I sat there and just cried at the kitchen table, just wept in despair, because the more I chewed that bite of chicken, the voices screamed louder. And it was hard. It was hard. But I set myself on a schedule that I have to try. There isn't anything else to try. All the doctors were telling me that if you can't, gain this much weight, then you can't come back to therapy. You can't do this and you can't do that. We're basically going to fire you, which happened with half a dozen psychiatrists, because I wouldn't sign a contract and say that I would gain 3 pounds a week. They tell me not to come back, that I was non-compliant. Well, it wasn't that I was non-compliant. I was ill. I couldn't comply. So I set myself on a schedule that each week or week and a half, I would then double that amount. Once I got used to the 1 ounce, I would double it. And that's what I did for several months, until I got to 8 ounces of chicken every day. And about that time, I was still watching Georgia Ede and Chris Palmer and some others, Amber O'Hearn, and some others that had healed mental illness through this way of eating. And then I was introduced to Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Sean Baker, and they talk about how all meat is wonderful, but there's a nutrient profile in beef that can help even more. It's just a notch above. It's just a powerhouse of nutrition. So at the 8 ounces of chicken, and armed with those videos, I decided to try to switch equal amounts for that chicken to what I could do at the time was 93% fat-free ground beef. But I was able to do it. And after several weeks, this is probably now 4 to 6 months in on that first year, 5.5 years ago, between like the 8 ounce part of ground beef and 12 ounces that I finally got to, there were some changes that happened. There were some changes that I was noticing the way I was feeling. The brain fog was lifting. The fatigue was lifting. Some of the OCD symptoms were lifting. I didn't have to constantly count things and check things and recheck them. And some of the things were subsiding with the cutting and the hair pulling. Whereas before, I would vow in the morning that I would never do it again. But by the time I would go to bed at night, you would think you have control over your hands, you have control over what you're doing with them. But by the time I would go to bed at night, I had already, succumbed to it again. And then you go through the guilt and shame of that. So before this, it was always trying to force myself to walk away from that. And I couldn't. And this was different. This was a healing from within that I was now able to look at each thing that I was doing externally and say, what am I doing to myself? You know what? I don't need this anymore, and I don't want to do this anymore. And that was a miracle. That was a revelation that I had never, ever experienced before. And I began to get more brave. And so I wanted to do something other than that very lean ground beef. And I started to watch Ken Berry videos that talked about the benefits of the collagen and the connective tissue that can be found in the larger cuts of beef that you can just put in a crock pot. So I bought chuck roast, and I was able to switch out the equal amount that I was eating of the ground beef to the chuck roast. And within 2 months of doing that, I had gotten up to a pound of chuck roast a day. And more astonishing things were happening. I was able to walk away completely from the cutting and the hair pulling. It didn't serve me anymore. It was nothing that I needed, that I was interested in. I could see it as a very harmful thing, and it wasn't a struggle to walk away from it anymore. I did not want to do it anymore, and it ended. And that voice, those voices that screamed at me at the 6 or 8 month mark, they had quieted enough for me to describe it as they're now in another room with the door shut. It's still there, still screaming, but it's much farther away. And at the 1 year mark that I was eating that pound of beef, it was gone. Completely gone. Never in my entire life has there ever even been a reduction in those voices screaming at me. And it was gone. And I was just astounded. Just astounded. I worried that it would all come raging back. I would wake up in the morning and think, oh, this is too good to be true. How can this all be gone? Because all of my doctors all these years said that you could control it, that you could put some weight on and be better, but you'd have to deal with it for the rest of your life, that it would still be there, and you'd have to be careful, because if you were around other people, or you skipped a meal, or you were ill with the flu and you lost a few pounds, watch out, because it's all going to come raging back. It's never going to be gone. This is what is going to be for the rest of your life. So I worried for a while that it would come back, but it never has. This is permanent. This is a permanent, miraculous healing of the brain. And once I got to that 1 pound of meat, everything mentally had healed. So I didn't have to increase it in increments anymore. This was not a forcing anymore. This was, I love this way of eating. I love what this beef tastes like. It's delicious. I get 4 or 5 bites in, and I can actually feel a calm come over me. So at that point, I was what I consider to be just all in. I just went for it, and I quickly increased it to up to what I am. Well, no, that's not what I am now, but I quickly increased it to 2 pounds. And so for the first 2 years of my healing, that's about what I ate. I don't track. I don't count calories. I don't count macros. There are times now that I'm 5.5 years healed and I'm counseling others that I have done that to document so that I can help others. That this is what I eat to help them. But I've only done it like maybe 3 times in the last 3 years. It's just to help others. It's not anything to benefit me at all. I don't care. how many calories I'm eating. I don't care what my macros are. I've found my healing. I found what works. And that's all I care about. Now, I care about the science behind it, and I am interested in all those things. But for me personally, on a daily level with my actual food, I'm not doing any of that. I eat 2 meals a day. I eat till I'm full. I know approximately, how many pounds of meat that I eat now because I'm cooking it, which is now about 3 pounds. And yeah, about 3 pounds a day.
Wow. So you're eating more than me.
Funny you say that. There's me and one other lady on Twitter that we joke back and forth, kind of, that she and I can out eat most of the men on Twitter, because they'll post their macros and she and I will be like, "Whoa, I eat twice that in a day." But I'm tall, and I do exercise. I'm trying to put on muscle. I'm strength training, trying to put on muscle. And I've always had a very fast metabolism. So it takes a large quantity of food. And I have to make sure that I get those 2 meals in, because I will quickly lose weight if I go under that. So I have to make sure I eat enough.
Wow. So how's your family been over this time? I mean, it must have been pretty stressful for them at the time, but like how are they feeling about everything now?
They're overjoyed now. Then it was very difficult. Um, like I said, I have a wonderful husband who has stood by me through thick and thin, better or worse. Most of it was worse. My 2 daughters and my mom, I'm close to my mom, huge advocate for me my whole life. They've only had the me that I am now for 5 years. And it was, they suffered. They suffered greatly. Um, Standing by and watching me self-destruct and not being able to do anything. And it wasn't ignored. They were constantly worried for me, talking to me, talking to each other, and then approaching me. And I wanted to be better, but I had no way of getting there. Every time that I tried, it didn't work. The mental illness has to be healed first. That's why the weight restoration through carbs and sugar doesn't fix anything. And there are times now, even on Twitter and Instagram, that people make comment that, well, of course you're going to be better. You gained weight. Well, I have to tell them that the first year that I found all of my mental illness healing, I gained no weight. I was still 80 pounds. So it wasn't weight gain that healed me. It was the protein and the fat that healed me. The weight gain came after that, after the mental illness was completely healed, after my brain was completely healed. I could then increase my food even more and slowly gain 45 pounds. And there's no scare of relapsing. There's no scare of anything that's going to happen, or I'm going to backslide, or that I see anything that might trigger, like an image of someone thinner used to trigger things that, hey, I have to get to that weight, or I have to starve. There are no triggers anymore. It's completely gone. It is. But it was very difficult for them to be with me, because it not only affected our relationship, it affected what we did as a family. It was not fun to go out to eat. It was not fun to go to family gatherings where there was food. It was not fun to do anything in the summer when everyone else was enjoying the weather and I was sitting there just cold to the bone. There was always a wall emotionally to feel really connected to the ones that I loved the most. And it wasn't a wall that I built myself. It was the brain. It was this mental illness that blocked me. And I was sad all the time. I was angry a lot. It was torture to them as it was for me. And now I just have this overflowing joy and energy now, that we smile all the time. It's just, it's complete enjoyment to be with my mom, to be with both of my daughters who are now adults, to do things and spend time with my husband. Everything is brand new. Even simple activities of just sitting down and watching a movie together is just a brand new, exciting, joyful experience for me now. And they saw me go through some major illnesses also during that time. I had some major surgeries that had to happen that were a direct result of my malnutrition. And that was devastating. That was truly devastating. People think that when you're underweight or anorexic, they don't think about what's going on inside. They see the skeletal body, but you don't really think about the damage that can actually happen internally with your organs, with your muscles. I lost so much musculature from being 80 pounds for that many years that I lost the ability to hold organs in place. And in 2010, I had a multi-organ prolapse where 3 really important organs prolapsed, and I had to have major surgery. And it was a direct result from this. This is not something that happens to someone that was my age in 2010. This is something that normally happens to very, very elderly, frail, sarcopenic people who don't have the muscle to hold organs in place. So that was very devastating. And the recovery was extremely hard. I'm allergic to all opiates. And so there was nothing that could be used for pain relief. So I basically had to recover from all of this major surgery and stitching and with no pain relief. And that, going through that, plus some other major ones that happened before that, you would think would say, okay, I have to be done with this. I have to do something. But that's the nature of mental illness. It doesn't seem to matter what is happening physically, even major surgery, even major things that are going wrong in your body. That mental illness component just drives you, and you can't walk away. So I'm just so thankful and so joyful to be well and thriving, and my brain is so calm. And I learned a lot about myself, about dietary through this also. The first 2 years I was very strict carnivore. And it was through that I learned how much harm vegetables were doing to me. There are plenty of people out there that enjoy vegetables and can leave them in and don't have an issue. And I wish I was one of them sometimes, because there's a few vegetables that I really like. But eliminating them those first 2 years, I had very severe IBS. I had bloating, constant intestinal pain that would have me doubled over in pain for 24 hours. And in order to, and I never connected the dots that it was the vegetables that was doing it to me. I didn't know anything about that. The food pyramid and all of our government and all of our food industry says, eat 7 to 11 servings of grain and eat that much vegetables, and that's the way to health. So in order to stand up under all of this, I was taking 4 ultra-simethicone gas pills every day, not even just as needed. I was actually putting them in my vitamin compartments to just take them every day, every day, every day. That's the only way that I could eat green beans, broccoli, coleslaw, and not be laying down in pain. I was standing up in pain. Well, when we go through these transformations, you start to question everything, not only your food, but your supplements, your medicines that you take, if you're on any. So I began to wonder, well, I've never really understood what simethicone actually is. What is this ingredient that's in this gas pill that takes some of this bubbly pain away? Well, I did a deep dive into what those pills are. And when I found out that the ingredient is siloxane, which is the same ingredient that they make breast implants out of, it's silicone. I'm like, I'm poisoning myself. I've been taking 4 of these capsules every day for 15 years to eat a bowl of broccoli. Okay, I am done with this. I am never swallowing another one again. So when I eliminated those pills out of my vitamins, oh my goodness, I got a true picture of what these vegetables were doing to me, because now there was no pain relief. Now there was nothing that was mitigating the symptoms that I was experiencing. So going strict carnivore healed all of that. I don't have any of that going on anymore. And there was a time when I thought, 3rd year, 4th year, maybe things have healed and I can have, a few bites of asparagus. I can have a bite of coleslaw, with all of my meat, and it won't bother me. Huh, no, no, it's not worth it. If I was in discomfort for maybe half an hour or an hour and it would go away on its own, once in a while I can see, have a bowl of green beans with all your meat and enjoy it, because I do enjoy the taste of them. But this is 24 hours. This is not worth that. I have a joyful life to live now. I have a message that I'm passionate about. I have people in my life that love me, that I want to try to, you can't make up for those 35 years, but boy, I can sure try to redeem it. We can have fun all day long, doing things that I never enjoyed before. I have people counting on me. I have people that I'm, trying to help that reach out to me. It's just that bowl of coleslaw is just not worth it. So that helped me understand that. I also had, going off of the vegetables and then learning more about what's been going on in the last couple of years, learning about oxalate toxicity, certain vegetables and foods and wheat and nuts that are very high in oxalates. I had a condition called IC, which long term is called interstitial cystitis. I had 24-hour bladder pain and spasms that I sought treatment for all these years. I was taken under treatment, and they did all kinds of infusions into my bladder to try to soothe it with medicines. And then, they would put all of this liquid up into my bladder, and then it would all run back out, and it was supposed to soothe all of that and heal things. It never did. It never did anything, all the different treatments. So what I discovered when I went through this with vegetables, the spinach, for me in particular, there's a lot of oxalate, there's very high oxalate in almonds, almond flour, almond milk. I wasn't doing that, but me in particular, the ones that bothered me that I was consuming were raspberries, spinach, celery, and way too many cups every day of black tea. Those are all high in oxalates. And when I went strict carnivore for those first 2 years to get as much brain healing as I could to get completely well, the interstitial cystitis healed. It went away completely. And I now know that it was the oxalates in those foods that had damaged my bladder, and were causing those symptoms. And when I eliminated those foods and allowed it all to heal, it all went away. So, there are compounds in certain plants, if eaten in excess, will harm you. And I'm a big advocate of, if keto works for you and you leave those vegetables in and this is what works for you, that's wonderful. But if you still have lingering pain, if you have interstitial cystitis, if you have arthritis pain, if you have joint pain, if you have brain fog, you might want to kick it up a notch and see if vegetables or almonds or almond milk or any of these things that are deemed okay and healthy on a ketogenic diet, those foods could be driving some of that remaining illness. And by removing those, you can really find out whether they're affecting you or not.
Just to change the direction slightly, are you able to talk about Amelia at all?
I am. I am. I was very, very privileged back in March to be contacted by the people that were going to be doing this case series on anorexia and using a keto/carnivore diet to put it into remission. I plus 2 others in the series had responded to those who were reaching out, and they chose me to be a part of this case series. And for the longest time, I needed to stay quiet about it. The case series is so groundbreaking, and in order for it to be entered into a medical journal, an official medical journal, the participants need to be anonymous. They need to have pseudonyms, and they need to have their identity not revealed. And so it was fascinating to be a part of it, to sit down and document the things that needed to be documented, to send to them. In order for this all to be typed up and entered into the journal, I had phone interviews and video interviews and a long list of questions to answer, pictures to submit, pictures of food to submit of what I eat now, so that they could try to the best of their ability to feel this out, that this is what it is, that I'm actually healed completely, not dealing, with anything else anymore. And so that was really an honoring and privileged experience. I spent time on the phone with one gentleman in particular, and that was the first time I'd really ever talked to anyone at length about how much had healed. There's one thing that anorexics deal with that's called body dysmorphia, where you look in the mirror and see someone very fat, and that can stay with someone for a long time. And there are women and men out now that probably don't have a clinical diagnosed eating disorder, but they have body dysmorphia, and that is a brain signaling issue also that healed completely. And so those were the things that we talked about on the phone. These are the markers that categorize you into the anorexic category, categorize you into the mental illness category. And are you still dealing with this? No, Are you still dealing with this? No, it's all gone. So it was just an awesome experience to be able to not only talk to them, but supply them with my own food logs, my own answers to questions. I was able to sit down and type up my own bio, my own story, and share with them what I've gone through and give them intricate details, just like we're doing here, of when things changed, what I was eating when things started to change, what healed at what point, what healed more when I ate more meat. It was just amazing. And so recently, within just the last 2 to 3 weeks, that it was actually entered, the case series was accepted and entered into the Journal of Insulin Resistance. And once it's published, then anyone who's a participant can choose to reveal themselves. And that was one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to use that, if I could, as another platform to help others. That's what I hope to spend the rest of my life doing, is advocating for those who are still in darkness, those that are still relying on traditional treatment to somehow fix them. And what do we say the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result. That's what I did for 35 years. And I think of the suffering out there, not only for eating disorders, but any mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, OCD, anxiety, ADHD, I mean, all of those neurological conditions that can be helped by nutrient-dense foods. And so it was really an awesome experience to be a part of that. And then when the great reveal happened on Twitter that that I had come forward, that I was this person, patient number 3, Amelia, it was mostly good comments, good compliments, but there were some contrarians out there that without, and I'm sure they probably didn't even read the actual case series. They didn't click the link and read the case series. They saw my before image and my after image and what my BMI was and how many years I claimed to be healed, and they didn't know me. They just had a pseudonym to go by, and they would blast in the comments that this wasn't possible, that this is ridiculous, this is crazy. And I've been able to hopefully enlighten those, because I have responded and replied to every single one that has been complimentary to me, but also the ones that questioned, also the ones that even hurled some insults. I have responded to every single one, and I hope that I changed some minds. I hope that I put a face with a name, an actual person with a skeletal image that bridges that gap to make them open their heart and their mind to see that food is medicine. Food is not just something that you consume and expect your body to run optimally when you're not giving it what it needs. Your body can't heal and function the way that it needs to if you're not giving it what it needs. So it's been really fun to try to enlighten and also come alongside those who have reached out to me that saw, because of my involvement in the case series, just how sick I was, that it wasn't just slightly underweight and then I came out of it. Sometimes having to show the graphic image of just how sick I was gives more validity to where I am now. It wasn't just something that I dabbled in and then just decided to eat something different. I was not long for this world. I was not going to make it much longer. My husband would even worry sometimes that maybe I would pass in my sleep. And my mother worried that she would get a phone call that I was no longer here. So this is important. Mental illness, and especially anorexia, which carries the highest mortality rate of all psychiatric illnesses. It's very important. It seems like a small percentage of the population, and it is, but it has the highest mortality rate. Because if you combine the mental illness with the malnutrition and the low weight, those who suffer either die because of the starvation or because of the mental illness and they take their own life, or they die from complications from organ failure. And those three make it the highest mortality rate. And it's needless. It can be prevented. It can be treated. It can be healed. I am evidence. And there are those others out there that are evidence also. And we all need to advocate for each other that this is important to talk about and that true healing is there.
Yeah. You're definitely a good advocate to have out there, both for people that are suffering this way, and also for the carnivore diet generally. So Valerie, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
I'm active on Twitter and Instagram, and on both platforms. My handle is Valerie Ann 1970, and so I have the same username on both platforms. And anyone can reach out to me for help on both of those platforms. I welcome direct messages, and I very frequently give out my email and my phone number so that we can talk in real time. It's very difficult to try to come alongside and help anyone with any nutritional issue, whether it be someone reaching out to me with an eating disorder or someone who just has watched my posts on Instagram and Twitter about weight training or nutrition, about the importance of iodine or salt or removal of oxalates. I do a lot of different things that are close to my heart. And so it's difficult to just do a direct message and try to get a picture of someone's eating patterns, what ailments they're dealing with. So I usually say, do you want to talk, would you be okay with talking on the phone? We can have a real-time conversation, talk to each other, and I'll sit down and take notes and just try to come alongside them, be a sounding board. A lot of times we can figure things out together. They can tell me what they're eating, tell me how long they've been doing this, what they've eliminated, what they've added, what their ailments are, what their why is. We all have to have a why. Is your why to reverse type 2 diabetes? Is your why for cancer treatment? Is your why for brain healing? And that all takes a little bit, nuanced, different approach. And if I can be a sounding board where we can talk about all of these things, and they can tell me how they're feeling about after they eat certain foods, or after protein, or after additional fat, and if they're having symptoms or issues, we can just talk about that and usually get a plan going of what to do from here. And I continue to check in with them, whether it be through text or phone or on social media. I keep track of everyone that's reached out to me, and I check in with them and, okay, how are you doing? And what's going on now? And let me know what's improved and what's not improving, and let's see what we can do to get you feeling better.
That's awesome. So, Valerie, I really appreciate you coming on today to share your journey, this important message, and how much the carnivore diet has helped you with healing, and how much better life is for you now. It's been
It is.
fantastic.
It is. It's yeah, there are people out there that talk about carnivore or keto being restrictive, you know, and I get right in the middle of that. When somebody says that, I'm all in getting in that, because this is my freedom. Restriction is having a mental illness. Restriction is avoiding family situations. Restriction is not having the energy to get out of bed, or having illnesses or sicknesses that prevent you from being active in your life. That's what restriction is. This is not restriction. This way of eating is freedom. This has literally saved my life, literally given me my life back. I don't struggle with anything anymore. You know, the carnivore diet optimizes everyone's health, no matter what side of the spectrum you're coming from. If you're coming from needing to lose weight, but you have illnesses to heal, and carnivore has healed those illnesses, and then the weight starts to come off, and you get to your optimal weight. Well, I was the opposite, but it still did the same thing. It healed my mental illness so that then I could gain weight. So carnivore is not I would never consider it a weight reduction diet. It's a weight optimization diet. And it's given me my health. It's given me my freedom mentally, physically, spiritually. I feel alive and joyful all the time. You know, everybody has a bad day. Everybody has stress in their life. But even then, even when stressful situations happen, I don't go into any kind of a spiral. I don't go into any kind of, oh, it's going to take me several days to come out of this. There's a foundation laid there for my nutrition that kind of holds me above all of that stress and bad mood. And the joy is still there. The joy is, absolutely still there. And I'm just so thankful to be here.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.